Limerence, The Nature and Function of Passionate Love by Johan Verhulst, 1984. A summary by NoteBookLM. This document provides a detailed review of the key themes and important concepts presented in Johan Verhulst's 1984 paper, Limerence, Notes on the Nature and Function of Passionate Love. The paper builds upon and elaborates on the work of Dorothy Tennov, who coined the term limerence to describe the state of being in love. Overall purpose and context. Verhulst's paper addresses the significant lack of scientific investigation into passionate love despite its powerful influence on human lives and history. He criticizes previous psychoanalytic and psychological approaches for focusing primarily on underlying psychodynamics, partner choice determinants, or viewing love as simply intense attraction. Instead, Verhulst champions Tennov's phenomenological approach, which focuses on describing the subjective experience of being in love and uses this as a foundation for a deeper understanding of its nature, function, and process. Key concepts and themes. Limerence as a distinct phenomenon. The central theme is the identification and definition of limerence as a specific psychological state, distinct from other forms of love or attachment. Verhulst adopts Tennov's term limerence to avoid the semantic ambiguity of the word love. Quote, Tennov coined the term limerence to indicate the state of being in love. Quote, Tennov's phenomenological description is a promising step in the scientific study of romantic love. It is based upon careful observations and delineates a fairly specific love syndrome, which can be distinguished from other kinds of love. Phenomenological characteristics of limerence. Based on Tennov's research, Verhulst outlines the core symptoms and characteristics of the limerence experience. Emotional dependency and preoccupation with reciprocity. The limerence emotional state is highly contingent on perceived reciprocity from the limerent object. Extreme happiness follows signs of reciprocation, while despair results from perceived rejection. Quote, the limerent is emotionally dependent on the limerent object. The limerent continuously tries to interpret the actions of the limerent object and to figure out whether or not he or she will reciprocate or continue to reciprocate one's feeling of love. Intrusive preoccupation. The limerent is constantly thinking about the limerent object, unable to focus on other things for extended periods. This intrusive thinking is a key measure of the intensity of limerence. Quote, limerence is characterized by continuous, intrusive preoccupation with the limerent object. Longing for exclusive reciprocity. The limerent deeply desires a free, total, exclusive, and absolute emotional commitment from the limerent object. The value is placed on the exclusivity of feelings, not necessarily sexual contact. Quote, the limerent longs for reciprocity, for a free, total, exclusive, and absolute commitment of feelings on the part of the limerent object. Idealization and increased sensitivity to signs of reciprocity. The limerent tends to idealize the limerent object and is highly attuned to any perceived signs of reciprocal feelings, often interpreting ambiguous behavior as a sign of hidden passion. Single focus. Limerence is typically directed towards only one person at a time. Intensity increases with adversity. Challenges or uncertainty in the relationship can sometimes intensify limerent feelings. Potential for performance anxiety. Sexual contact with a limerent object can lead to performance anxiety due to its significance as a sign of reciprocity. Limerence as an altered state of consciousness. Verhulst proposes a key hypothesis that limerence is an altered state of consciousness, specifically an affect-dominated state, which contrasts with the ordinary, language-dominated state. This framework helps explain the fusional characteristics of limerence without reducing it solely to a regression to early developmental stages. Quote, this article proposes to look at limerence as an altered state of consciousness and sees limerence as an affect-dominated state of mind, which contrasts with the ordinary, language-dominated state. Quote, affect-dominated states of mind are essentially unmediated. Without the mediating role of language, the distinctions between self and non-self are abolished. Fusional characteristics and early development. The paper acknowledges the link between limerence and pre-Oedipal stages of development, particularly the concept of fusional object relations. The intrusive thinking, dependence, and blurring of boundaries in limerence resemble the symbiotic fusion of mother and infant. However, Verhulst argues against defining limerence solely as a regression or deficit. Quote, limerence can be seen as a regression to early attachment behavior to an oral stage of development with fusional object relations. Quote, rather than speculating about the question whether limerence is a regressive or a transcendental experience, it may be more useful to adopt a different approach. This article proposes to look at limerence as an altered state of consciousness. The role of language. Verhulst discusses the connection between language development and subject-object differentiation, drawing on the ideas of Jacques Lacan. Language is seen as a mediating force that separates the self from the world. In affect-dominated states like limerence, the breakdown of language mediation contributes to the sense of merger and fusional experience. Quote, language also interrupts the symbiotic union between the child and the world. Its acquisition reflects the differentiation of the subject from the objective world. Quote, limerence, clearly, is an affect-dominated state of mind. This explains the fusional characteristics of limerence, with the concomitant incapacity to objectify and to structure time sequentially. Limerence as a dynamic process. Verhulst views limerence not as a static phenomenon, but as a process with distinct phases, influenced by individual and interactional factors. The cycle of limerence. He proposes a 5-phase model. Prelimerence, a state of readiness and longing, influenced by biological and psychological factors, e.g., loneliness, discontent. Prereciprocity, the initial stage where limerence is communicated, often nonverbally. Ambiguity from the limerent object can intensify feelings, while clear rejection leads to dissolution. Reciprocity, the phase of mutual limerence, which can last from days to years and is often associated with pair bonding. External adversity and uncertainty can prolong this phase. Limerence dissolution, the gradual fading of the limerent state, typically averaging around 2 years. Reactions to this dissolution vary, from seeking a new limerent object to attempting to maintain the illusion of limerence or transitioning to postlimerence. Postlimerence, a phase characterized by stable pair bonding, strong attachment, and commitment built on open communication and conflict resolution. This phase represents successful navigation of the developmental task posed by limerence. Individual differences and developmental influences. While limerence has basic characteristics, the way individuals experience and navigate it is influenced by their personal history and psychosexual development. Early experiences can shape the secondary characteristics of limerence. Limerence as a developmental task and growth opportunity. Verhulst positions limerence as a potential developmental crisis that, when navigated successfully, can lead to personal growth and the formation of stable, mature relationships. Postlimerence. Failure to navigate this transition can lead to recurring cycles of limerence and dissolution. Quote, limerence can be seen as a developmental crisis that produces fundamental alterations in patterns of thought and the emergence of new beliefs and new modes of living. Quote, the transition from mutual limerence to the state of postlimerence constitutes an important developmental task for the couple. Clinical relevance and future research. The paper emphasizes the significant clinical implications of understanding limerence, particularly for marital and family therapy. It highlights the need for further research using a phenomenological approach and calls for clinicians and researchers to take this phenomenon seriously, overcoming biases and taboos surrounding discussions of passionate love. Most important ideas/facts. Limerence is a distinct, definable psychological state of being in love, characterized by emotional dependency, intrusive preoccupation, and a powerful longing for exclusive reciprocity. Limerence is best understood as an altered state of consciousness, an affect-dominated state that involves a blurring of self-other boundaries, rather than solely as a regression to infantile stages. Language plays a crucial role in mediating our experience of the world, and the reduced mediation in limerence contributes to its fusional characteristics. Limerence is a dynamic process that unfolds in phases: prelimerence, prereciprocity, reciprocity, dissolution, postlimerence, influenced by a complex interplay of individual readiness and interactional factors. Navigating the dissolution of mutual limerence and transitioning to postlimerence is a critical developmental task for individuals and couples, essential for forming stable, long-lasting relationships. Understanding limerence is vital for clinical practice, particularly in marital therapy, and requires further scientific investigation. In summary, Verhulst's paper, building on Tennov's work, provides a crucial framework for understanding limerence as a specific and powerful human experience. By defining its characteristics, exploring its nature as an altered state of consciousness, and outlining its dynamic process, the paper moves beyond traditional limited views of romantic love and underscores its significance for individual development and relationship formation.